All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello everyone, this is Adam Gurza with Energy Toolbase. On the line with me today is Tim Swaney, the Technical Services Manager with Utility API. We are going to be the co-presenters on today's webinar. I want to start by just saying thank you very much for taking time out of your day to check this out. We're especially excited today because we have a huge turnout. We've actually kind of crushed our previous record in terms of registrations for this webinar. We had over 350 registrations. We've already got over 100 people on the line, so many of which are very high quality folks, which is as important as the number of people. So that's really incredible, and I think this speaks to the timeliness and the relevancy of the stuff that we're talking about today. I have two very quick housekeeping items, and we're going to dive right in. Number one, this is being recorded, and we're going to email you the link to the recording right afterwards, so you can watch parts if you have to duck out early, or maybe share this with a colleague. And number two, this is absolutely meant to be a live and interactive webinar. So if you have any questions at all, chat them over through the GoToWebinar client. Excuse me. And we're going to do Q&A at the end because we do have a lot of material to run through, and we've kind of got our prepared set of demos ready, and then we'll do as much Q&A as we can at the end. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at the agenda, and then I'm going to hand it off to Tim. So Tim is going to kind of kick things off by just making some general remarks about the Green Button Data Standard. Oh no, oh boy, that's not good. I just realized we have a maximum number of attendees. That's a bummer. I might not have set that up correctly on the back end, but it looks like we're getting capped at 100, and we're now kind of going past that. Actually, if you guys could give me 20 seconds, let me see if I can't fix that very quickly, because I'm getting messages that more people can't come in. I see, so that's the registration limit. I think the show is going to have to go on, and for the folks that aren't going to be able to watch this, they're just going to have to watch the recording. So I'm going to, after Tim runs through his demo and kind of shows some screens on how to use the Utility API service, he's going to pass it to me, and I'm going to show off our recently launched integration with Utility API. And then really the bulk of the presentation today is going to be number 4. And we're going to be running through a lot of the use cases and the valuable benefits of once you have Green Button data, all the cool things you can do with it for your DER project development activities. And you can see the 3 use cases we're going to run through there. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it off to you, Tim, and tell us about Green Button data to start with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adam. And again, my name is Tim Swaney, and I'm with Utility API, serving as their Technical Services Manager. And again, just wanted to really reiterate just the thanks to everyone on the line. Really looking forward to this webinar. So just real quickly, for those of you that may not be familiar with the Green Button Initiative and the Green Button Standard, Green Button Initiative, an industry-led effort that was in response to a White House call to action, and has been put out with support of the U.S. Department of Energy. And this was designed to provide electricity customers with easy access to their energy usage data, either for their home or business. And the idea behind this too was to create a standardized format that was machine readable, that would make it easier for DER developers to be able to migrate and use this data quickly and easily. Now, Energy Toolbase and Utility API are members of the Green Button Alliance, and we certainly need everyone's support to continue adoption and improve implementations nationwide. So, and this is part of the reason too that most recently our CEO of Utility API, Alina Lucas, was elected to the board of the Green Button Alliance. So we're definitely big supporters of this, and we know how important it is. Both Adam and I have seen a massive uptick in the number of projects that are using this data. Maybe in the past it was kind of a niche data set for some high-level analytics, but it is becoming vital to projects all across the nation, especially for energy storage. So with that, I'm going to jump in real quickly to a little bit about Utility API and how we automate the process of getting this data and getting you complete data sets. So we at Utility API, we automate the collection of energy usage data. We get it out of utilities and into the hands of renewable energy project developers like you. And we are also supporting the Green Button Alliance and ensuring that you get complete data sets. So along with that, ever so vital 15-minute interval data, along with monthly billing data, so you really get a complete picture of what your project is going to look like. So we're super excited about this, and a lot of us at the organization cut our teeth either with solar companies or actually at utility companies, and we experienced firsthand sometimes how difficult it is to get this data. And so we saw that problem, and this is what entrepreneurs do. And we simplified this process not only for DER developers, but also from the utility account holder side and sharing that data over. So it's a quick 4-step process, and we do it quickly. So let's jump to the next slide. So what this actually looks like in terms of requesting data via our platform, you can send a data request directly to a customer via email to pre-select their utility, customize the message. And when you actually send a data request, next slide, it's just a simple authorization form specific to each utility, and the customer is authorizing us to collect data on behalf of you as a renewable energy developer, and then when they click to authorize access to their data, usually within a couple of minutes, next slide, you can have that complete data set that includes Green Button data. We scan a number of other sources as well to ensure that you get a complete data set. So you get that monthly billing data and that all-important interval data. And we're also super excited about the integration that we have with Energy Toolbase and just making it really seamless and straightforward to get this data into key software as service programs like Energy Toolbase so that you guys can continue on and develop your projects quickly. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Adam and really get into what the implications are for NEM and
Awesome. Thank you very much, Tim. Before I dive in, let me do one very brief slide just overviewing Energy Toolbase for those of you that don't know us or maybe are not using us. So Energy Toolbase is a software as a service platform for modeling and proposing the economics of solar and storage projects. What we're really deeply focused on is utility rate and avoided cost analysis. So basically how much a project saves in dollar terms. We have roughly 1,000 users today. In many cases, these are kind of more sophisticated DER developers, folks that are looking at solar and storage projects. We have energy service companies, we have policy organizations, we have some utilities, and that number is growing. And one last thing to mention, I kind of always sound like a broken record on this, but our product approach is down here. It's listed. We really, throughout all the analysis on the platform, really want to take a very objective and very transparent approach throughout. And you're going to see examples of that as I jump to my demo here. Okay, cool. With that, I get to now jump into some of the fun stuff. And what I'm going to start by doing is demoing the recently launched integration we just did with Utility API. We went live on this just a couple of months ago. And why don't I start by going into a new proposal that I've got set up. And for those of you that are seeing our screens for the first time, just kind of follow along. I know we have a lot of power users on the call today, and those folks know kind of exactly where to look. I'm on step 2 of our edit proposal screen, which is where we create an energy use profile. And an energy use profile for us is just like an internal term, which is basically how we recreate a 365-day utility bill. And you can see the new beautiful blue button there, and this is with our integration. So right now, we just hit the utility API server, and this is linked to a specific account. This happens to be one of my demo utility API accounts. And I'm looking at all of the projects and all of the meters that I've pulled data from in my utility API account. And I want to show something really quickly. Tim just mentioned this, but there's a bunch of data that utility API pulls down. Number one, this is a very obvious one. They're grabbing all of the utility bills. This is a PG&E bill for my house. Number two is this file here, which is really valuable, which is showing monthly summary data. That's kind of how I refer to this. But this is basically 12 months showing you the usage, showing you the bills, showing you the different breakout of the different categories of charges. So those are both valuable, but kind of ironically, we don't use either one of those. In Energy Toolbase, we exclusively use the green button data file. So I'm going to pull that in here. And actually, why don't I really quickly show this? Sometimes, I don't know. It's just, this is actually a green button data file here. And I know some people can't really visualize exactly what that file looks like. So this is opened in a text editor. And you can see it's kind of really a machine readable format as I start to scroll through this. And one thing I like to show off, if I was to scroll to the very bottom of this data set, and by the way, this is the data set that I'm importing right now from Utility API, I just kind of want you to look on the left-hand side of the screen there. There's 276,000 lines of data in this file. So this is kind of the machine readable schema, the green button standard that we're pulling in from Utility API. And it really takes about a second or two. So that data import's complete. And now here's the fun part. We're just going to assign this against a utility and a specific rate schedule. So this was a Southern California Edison GS2 TOU customer, which is a very common medium-large commercial schedule. And maybe I'll just quickly mention over here on the right-hand side, we always default you, or we attempt to default you to the most common sub-attributes of that schedule. So you can see here like the service voltage and the type. And also one other thing that's important to mention, we always default you to the most recent effective date schedule. So basically when we've recreated this bill right here on the bottom of the page, which is 365 days of data, based on those 35,000 data points that Utility API just passed us, this is all based on today's rates, in this case January 1, 2017 rates. Okay, now I want to show a cool new feature. So even for the power users on the line, they haven't seen this yet, and this is kind of what we're calling show seasonal load profiles. So this is going to bring up a visualization where we get a look at all 4 seasons of the year, and these are interactive charts, which is kind of cool. So I'm over here in the summer season, June through August, and you can just kind of really see the average shape of this customer's load profile, in this case on the weekdays. If I was to toggle to the weekend, you can see there's really not a lot of variance here between weekday versus weekend usage for this particular customer. I should have actually mentioned this before I brought it in, but this customer that we just brought that data from Utility API is a small mini market that has a lot of cold storage. And you can kind of even see it just in the shape of this profile because there's really not a whole lot of variance here. And I'll show you what I mean by that. The best way is to just kind of compare this against a different load profile. So let's go pull another one. And I know I'm kind of jumping around quickly. Let's look at this one here, which is a church. And I think it'll jump off the page that this is a church. So notice right now, all we're looking at is the weekdays. And frankly, there's not much activity at all on the weekdays, but let's look at the weekends. So check that out. You can really see that there's a ramp up on average in the weekend in that summer season. And it looks like they're kind of coming in for this particular church right around 6:45, 7 a.m. They're ramping up to a peak of 40 kW. And you can kind of see where they, shoulder out to. So this is average weekend data for this church. Let's look at one more. Let's look at my house, because I always love looking at residential load profiles from the green button data file. So this is actually my house in San Francisco before I moved less than a year ago. What I like to do on residential profiles is kind of hover my mouse on the peak, because I like to see, when did they peak. And you can see here for my house, I was kind of in the winter anyways, average peaking right around 8:30 in the evening. If I was to toggle to weekends, not a lot of variance weekday versus weekend here. And again, you're getting the idea. Effectively, we're visualizing those 35,000 data points Utility API passed us, And we're going to look at really cool examples of this in a minute when we're actually looking at it on a daily basis rather than on an average seasonal basis like this here. Okay, cool. So that's really the quick demo portion of the new integration with Utility API. I now am going to jump into the stuff that I'm especially excited to talk about, and that is the use cases. Once you have this data, there's a lot of incredibly valuable things that you can do with it, and you can see the three scenarios we're going to run through right now. So I'm going to start with time of use rates. And I've got two examples for time of use rates. I'm going to start with a very hot button topic right now in the state of California, and that is the time of use rate change proposals that the IOUs, the big three investor-owned utilities, are proposing. And the one thing to highlight, and this is getting most of the press coverage right now, which is the really aggressive and kind of radical shifting of the on-peak period to much later in the evening. So you can see how they're currently defined on the current rates. The on-peak period, which of course is the really premium priced time of use period, is kind of right now in the midday, noon to 6, and you can see where they're proposing to take it much, much later in the evening. And also it's actually worth noting, they're also proposing to make this year-round rather than just a 6-month summer. So let's look at one more slide. I think this slide here is definitely, this is a picture is worth 1,000 words for sure here, because there's just a lot of takeaways. We're looking at the PG&E A6 schedule. This is thought of as a very solar-friendly rate schedule. It's a commercial rate schedule up in the PG&E territory. And two things that are jumping off the page at me here. Number one, we can see the current on-peak period, you know, the 12 noon to 6 p, and the fact that it's being shifted out to the 5 to 10 p.m., as we saw on the last slide. But really maybe the bigger one is how much flattening between the on-peak and off-peak differential that new proposed rate is wanting to do. So right now on the current A6 rate, the on-peak summer rate is about 55 cents a kilowatt hour versus 18 cents a kilowatt hour off-peak. So that's about a 3x differential, a very steep differential on-peak to off-peak. And you can see here under the proposed how much flatter that's getting. Now, I kind of want you to keep those two data points in mind as we now jump back to the tool, and we're really going to start to model some of these scenarios. And the one that I've got set up here is actually an A6 project where basically what I've set up is we're just going to be comparing what the effect is on savings between the current rates and the proposed rates. And again, for those of you that are looking at kind of some of our user interfaces for the first time, I'm going to be working mostly off of the facilities dashboard summary on the bottom here. And I've got two facilities set up. The important thing to keep in mind is this. I brought in an identical green button file from Utility API. This is for like a medium-sized commercial customer using about 455,000 kilowatt hours annually. I designed a 200 kW DC rated solar system. For this project, I used the PV Watts version 5 API, and we're producing about 302,000 kilowatt hours annually, which translates to about a 66% offset. Okay, so that's just giving you guys some context. Everything is identical, except on the top one, we're basing this on the current A6 rates. On the bottom one is the new proposed rates. And now I kind of really want to focus over here and really talk about, well, what's happening to savings? And I've actually got another little table that I built. That's not it. I think it's this one right here. So this is really kind of just showing all the math. Right down here where my mouse is on the bottom of the screen, this is a number that I always really key in on. And this is showing you dollar per kilowatt hour avoided cost, or dollar per kilowatt hour blended savings. And you can see on the current rates, we were coming in at about 30.5 cents. If we were to move to the new proposed rates, that's dropping all the way down to about 20 cents. And the math on this is actually really simple. It's just the bill before less the bill after, which equates to savings. So a little over 90,000 on the current rates, a little under 60 or about 60,000 on the proposed rates. And then a lot of times folks are wanting to look at this in terms of percentage terms. Well, what does that equate to in percentage terms? And for this project, we're seeing a 34% erosion of savings if this customer, based on their unique load profile, was forced onto that new rate. So now I kind of want to go and unpack why. So that was just kind of a little bit of context for, we're seeing a really significant reduction in savings. Now let's kind of make sense of why. And this is what we call our demand profile visualization screen. It's a really cool module. It's very interactive and kind of dynamic. I can just select a range of dates like we are here. And you can see on the bottom of the screen, we're looking at 5 days in August. We're looking at August 10 through August 15 data. Okay, here's what I want to do. As I hover my mouse over the screen, what we're seeing here is this customer, based on the green button file Utility API gave us and the solar system we designed, is exporting a lot of energy. You can see for all 5 days, we're sending a lot back to the grid. And if I was to kind of hover my mouse right here, down on the bottom, I know there's a lot to look at, but I kind of really want you to key in on the A6, this little step here. Well, what that represents is the on-peak period. If you see me hovering my mouse, currently, as we said a minute ago, this is 12 noon to 6 p. And if you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but it's 55 cents. That's 55-cent energy. So for this customer and for this solar developer, this is a great setup because we're exporting a lot of energy in the on-peak period, and we're banking all of that effectively at 55 cents a kilowatt hour. That's obviously very, very rich and favorable. Okay, now let's toggle over to what the new rates look like. So let's attempt to kind of go back and find those same 5 days or get close to it. Okay, now let me hover my mouse right here. Look on bottom in red, if I can hold my mouse still. August 15th, 12 noon. So now this is still 12 noon. We're still exporting a lot of energy back, but check it out. Based on where the rates move, this is now off-peak energy. And you can see where that's valued, 19 cents a kilowatt hour. We're also exporting a bit of energy in the mid-peak category. You can see there, 24 cents a kilowatt hour. And then in that on-peak category, very, very little exports because it starts so late, right? It's starting at 5 o'clock in the evening, so we're just barely touching that. So you can really see how we're kind of getting back to this math here, which is the value of solar is dropping significantly, and it's really a result of, in this case, when they're exporting energy, it's just getting valued at such a reduced rate. So this is just one example. I kind of don't want to get stuck in the weeds on arguing about, these proposed rate changes in California, because I know they are a bit controversial right now. The bigger takeaway here is, in order to quantify the reduction in savings from one rate to another rate, in this case both time of use rates, you really need that granular usage data file, that green button data file for that particular customer, because this math is so specific to their load profile, the design of the system, and of course the rate schedules that we're modeling against. I want to show one other really quick one. I kind of got to keep moving, but I'll just take 1 minute here because I know there's folks on the line from all over the country, and sometimes we just get stuck in California, but I really want to drive home the point when you're modeling time of use rates. I don't care where you are in the country, whether it's a residential project, a commercial project, an ag project, really this all still applies, and that is, this scenario here is a much simpler one. It's a residential one where we're simply modeling a block rate versus tiered rate scenario. So we're kind of evaluating, does it make sense for this residential customer, after I install solar, to move on to that time of use rate, or should I leave him on the tiered rate, the block rate? And we've got some really cool tools. I'm going to just jump in and show you a really quick optimization. In step 4 solar, we have a feature called the ETB optimizer, and this is really pretty neat. We're simulating against that green button data file, and we're doing it based on the design parameters we've set up, which in this case is an 18 tilt 200 southwest. Looks like we have all the default PV watts variables on. And effectively here, we're simulating a bunch of different system sizes. So the way I'd read this chart here, down here in the x-axis is the DC rating. This is basically saying, hey, at a 2.7 kW DC rated system for this customer, based on their unique load profile, we can see in blue E1, in green E6, what their respective savings would be. So really valuable because a lot of times you're evaluating and really trying to find the sweet spot to size a system, and you want to do that against multiple schedules, in this case a block rate and the time of use rate. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm looking at the clock. I've got a lot left, so I'm going to kind of move on. and transition now to net metering version 2.0 scenarios. And I'm seeing a lot of awesome questions come in. Thank you guys. We're going to address all of these at the end, but keep chatting them over and we will attack these at the end. Okay, so for NEM 2.0, I have set up a residential project in Hawaii. And we're going to be modeling on the customer self-supply option. For those of you that are not familiar with that tariff, it's basically a tariff, a successor tariff or a NEM framework where they don't want you exporting to the grid. And if you do, you get zero compensation for it. So let me start by showing you how we set that up in Energy Toolbase, and then we'll kind of unpack how all the math is happening in the background, of course leveraging the green button data file we pulled in. Okay, so we're back in step 2, utility rates. I'm going to click into this hyperlink here, which we call net metering details, and just do a really quick walkthrough of how we've engineered our NEM 2.0 module. And even if you're not using our software and you have your own built-up Excel spreadsheet, or maybe you're even using another piece of software, I think you'll still appreciate kind of the methodology and our approach on how we've set this up. So let me just kind of walk through each of these individually really quickly. So the default is full retail value net metering. That's the default across our entire platform. And that's basically just saying, if you export solar production to the grid, that energy is getting valued at the full dollar per kilowatt hour volumetric retail rate of energy. So that's pretty easily understood. Okay, here's actually the customer self-supply option that I'm about to set up. This is now saying no net metering, fixed rate on exported energy. And we let you define what that fixed rate is. In some cases it could be a dime, it could be a nickel. And for this model here, we're going to do something really extreme and we're going to set it at 0. Before I do that, let me really quickly just hit this one as well, because this is actually the one that gets the most use right now, because this is the California model, the non-bypassable charge model, and a lot of our users are in California. So for the non-bypassable charge model, we have you come down here and define what the combined NBC charge is. In this case, I have it set at 2.5 cents. And NBC charges, actually, I think people make it more confusing than it really is. Every kilowatt hour you take from the utility that you import, that they give to you, you pay this charge, and you cannot offset that charge. When you export energy back and you net meter back, well, you can't net out that piece of it. So that's really the NBC model. One other thing that's actually worth mentioning is the true-up period, because this is actually coming up more now. And I want to make really quick mention of it. I've actually had this conversation twice in the last 2 weeks. So there are some utilities that are now moving towards a monthly true-up. And effectively what that would mean is, let's say you're at you have a house and you leave for a month on vacation and you are a net exporter of 500 kilowatt hours for that month, okay? You don't get to carry that energy forward, those 500 kilowatt hours, to subsequent months at full retail value. Instead, that energy gets valued at a wholesale rate, or California refers to this as the net surplus compensation rate. But effectively, you're getting trued up every month. You don't get to carry forward those credits, and it's actually really, really damaging to solar project economics in some cases. But it's another piece of the matrix that you can see we've set up here. Okay, without any further ado, let me just configure it to say, hey, look, we're going to say exports are valued at 0. Let's jump out of here. Now, check this out. I really want you guys to key in down here on the bottom. I haven't pressed saved yet. So right now, the blended savings is about 25.5 cents, assuming full retail value. So let's press save, and wow, check out where that just dropped to, all the way down to 10.6 cents on average. And again, I've got a little table built right here showing the NEM 1.0 and the NEM 2.0 on the customer self-supply option, savings dropping from 21.84 all the way down to 9.14, and on a dollar per kilowatt hour basis from 25.5 down to 10.6. Now, I will say this is a very unrealistic scenario, because check this out. This customer is exporting a ton of energy. I should have set this up earlier. The usage on this customer is about 12,000 kilowatt hours annually. We designed them a 6 kW DC rated system, producing about 8,500 kilowatt hours annually. So in kilowatt hour terms, we're offsetting about 72% of their usage. Well, here's what I'm keying in on now. 59% of all production is getting exported back to the grid. And let's take a quick peek at why. So let's jump back into that visualization module. Oops, I have to hit a really quick reload. And again, this is fair to say that this is an unrealistic example. You certainly would never size a system this big with this much offset if you're getting paid zero for that exported energy. So I think it's cool to start here. Let's look at 1 month and just kind of take this in. And you can see all the light blue exports and everything below the zero. So let's now kind of zoom in to a few days and think about what's happening. Actually, maybe I should start with this. If I hover my mouse over the top of the load, and this again is the green button data that's just being visualized, you can see this guy's peaking pretty late at night, 9:30, 10, 10:30 at night. What about over here? Same thing, 9:45. I actually nicknamed this load profile the Night Owl because this guy really does kind of whatever he's doing there, and this is real data, he's using late at night. So again, once we overlay our solar production from whatever solar production calculator that you choose to use, and we show our net, this amounts to, we're exporting a lot of energy midday. And again, when we added it all up over the course of a year, well, that equated to 59% of the energy is getting backfed back. And again, not a realistic example. I purposely picked a very, very extreme example, but I wanted to show really what's happening on the back end here when you're quantifying savings of a NEM 2.0 project. And again, going back to the whole point of this webinar, it really starts with the green button data file and the granular, unique load profile of this particular customer. And this guy's got a unique one, to be sure. You know, he's certainly a late peaker, and I think this math would not be as bad if, you know, he had a lot more of his usage midday. Okay, so that's a really quick run through on NEM 2.0. Now I am going to transition to energy storage. And I know I'm moving pretty quickly here. These are usually topics where, you know, I talk for 20 minutes on each one individually. Again, today the webinar is really about how green button data you know, gets leveraged to model these different things. I actually want to do one really quick plug while I have you. And on our Vimeo page, which is where we host all of our videos, we go a lot deeper on these topics if you want to check that out. You know, we got a 20-minute video just talking about NEM 2.0 or a 25-minute video just talking about time of use rates and the value of solar. So encourage you to check that out if you want to kind of dig deeper on this stuff. Okay, now let's transition to energy storage. So I've only got about 5 minutes left. I'm looking at the clock, and it's impossible for me to give a thorough explanation of how to model energy storage projects in 5 minutes. So instead, what again I'm really trying to focus on is the role that green button data plays in modeling these types of projects. And I want to start by saying it is an absolute prerequisite for energy storage. Let me just toggle to a month here. It is an absolute prerequisite to have green button data or granular interval meter data in order to precisely model the savings of a behind-the-meter energy storage project. And that statement does not just apply to Energy Toolbase. You know, that applies to everyone. Whether you're, you know, the smartest Excel wizard in the world, or you're, you know, another company that's developing their own software, we're all in the same boat here. We need granular historical usage data to really be able to ethically simulate what sort of dollar savings a customer can achieve. So let's look at this project here. I'm going to start by just going right into about 5 days. And I always think it's a little bit better when we kind of take everything away to begin with, and then we'll add layers back. Okay, so what we have on the screen now is 5 days of usage data. This is a pretty typical looking office building load profile. You see me hovering my mouse right here. You can see this guy coming in around 7:30 in the morning. He peaks up to about 70 kW. Looks like he shoulders out to about 5 p.m. And it's a pretty consistent looking load profile for those 5 days of the week. Okay, now let's start putting some layers on. So we're for this project, modeling a solar plus storage project. So there's our solar production data. And again, this could have came from Helioscope or PV Complete or PV Watts or whatever your solar production modeling tool of choice is. Now we're going to overlay our storage charge discharge data on the chart. And let me also show the net. And what I kind of want you to look at here is the light blue line, which is the net. And you can tell here pretty clearly what we're doing is a peak demand shaving control strategy. And you can see that the energy storage discharge, like right here at 8:15 in the morning, is really kind of complementing the solar midday, right? Kind of taking layers away again. If you just look at the load, the usage profile versus the solar production data, well, the solar's not really capturing those shoulders because, solar doesn't start waking up till 8, 9 in the morning and it doesn't peak up till about noon. So this guy's still got some kind of shoulders. So this is really, again, where the storage is doing a great job of kind of complementing the solar to shave demand from the dark blue line on top all the way down to the light blue line. And again, this is based on a peak demand shaving algorithm. Oh yeah, I should also overlay this. This is really important. This is a battery state of charge. So effectively what this means, if I was to hover my mouse right here, and you're looking at in red 0.35, that's effectively saying there's 35% of the capacity of the energy in the battery is left. Whereas up here, 100%, the battery is full. So really important to kind of think about as a battery charges and discharges, how much is left in the tank. And a lot of times the control strategy algorithms that are driving it are obviously really conscious of how much total energy capacity is in that battery. And a lot of times there's constraints. Like for instance, if I came down here, check it out. That's basically saying 6% left. Well, there are some battery chemistries obviously where you can't discharge further than like 70 or 80%. So this all gets configured in step 5. So actually, why don't I toggle there and make a couple final comments on this. Step 5 is our energy storage module. This is where a user is defining all of the system characteristics of their battery for this project. And we allow you to do it 2 ways, either in kind of generic terms where you're just telling us a kWh rating and a kW power rating and a max depth of discharge. Or alternatively, it's kind of cool, we also have a lot of equipment loaded in our database and you can just choose one of these vendors and model based off of one of their make and model batteries. So that's a really quick overview. Actually, there is one thing I want to really briefly tease on our energy storage module. We actually have a really big update coming to our energy storage module. And there's 2 things that are going to be happening. Number 1, we're going to be opening up all 3 control strategies. As of today, you can only do peak demand shaving. We're also going to be opening up the time of use arbitrage and the self-consumption control strategy, which is basically when you're pairing storage with solar and you're telling it not to export to the grid, like our Hawaii residential example earlier. That would have been a great use case for a self-consumption battery strategy. And the other big kind of release that we're going to be doing soon, which we're even more excited about, is what we're kind of referring to as optimal math. And what we mean by that is basically when we generate 365-day charge discharge profiles for the energy storage system, what we're going to now be doing is we're kind of going to be cheating, meaning we're going to look with perfect information at the 365-day green button data file that we've brought in. And like we can see the future. We know exactly what happens for this customer for every single day of the year. We have 35,000 intervals. And then we're going to be designing battery control strategies to mathematically optimize for the dollar savings, knowing perfect information, knowing how much they used, maybe also knowing how much solar is being produced. So the value that we're going to kind of solve for is going to say, hey, for maybe this project, for this control strategy, we can save a mathematically kind of theoretical ceiling of, let's say, $15,000. Now, that number is not going to be realistic for what you could achieve in the field. You're certainly not, you're going to get a percentage of that, but at least that number will be a really good, we think, data point to know what is the theoretical maximum based on the customer's unique load profile, the rate schedules you've defined. Maybe you're also doing some rate switch options like we've got set up here. And of course, the if you're pairing it with solar and what those specs look like. So I'm going to leave it there. Actually, that's probably a pretty good segue to just finish things because it really does bring it back to having perfect, complete information in that green button data file. And then there's one really, really quick plug I want to do before passing it back to Tim, and we'll do Q&A. Tim already mentioned these guys, the Green Button Alliance. This is an awesome organization. Hopefully in the course of this 30-minute webinar, I know a lot of you folks know all this stuff already, but you know, green button data it's just so valuable and necessary to correctly model a lot of these things. And this stuff doesn't happen by itself. You know, we got people working on this standard. Tim can tell you, he's the technical services manager. This stuff, we just tried to show you a nice polished demo. It doesn't work that way in practice. Stuff breaks. There's better ways of doing it. So we're working to improve the existing integrations that have happened. We're also wanting to get a lot more utilities to adopt this data standard. So really encourage everyone that's getting benefit from this to join this. It's actually really, really reasonable. I think we pay $1,500 a year for the lowest level membership. So we really need your support. And I kind of wanted to make a big plug on that. And with that, I am going to start Q&A. And Tim, I am talking way too much, so maybe I'm going to bring you in and kind of read the first couple. Let's see here. A lot of questions coming in. I saw one earlier. Somebody's asking, how much does the utility API service cost, and is that included in Energy Toolbase?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to jump in about that. We offer a variety of pricing levels. Really depends on your need and your usage. You can start with kind of like a la carte pricing, which is just $15 per meter for both residential and commercial. You can also prepay at the beginning of the month for blocks and get that price point down to as low as $10 per meter. So as you can see on the screen, our contact information is available there. We can definitely discuss what options would be best for individual use cases.
Awesome. Question number 2 for you, Tim. Do customers have to sign up for green button data, or is it automatic for all customers, both commercial and residential?
For the most part, it's automatic, and this is part of the challenge in dealing with the various types of integrations that have been done with Green Button. Many times we find that customers can just use Green Button right away, and whenever we see it being available on a specific utility, we have integrations already ready to go. Occasionally, we've seen for some commercial customers that there's a sign-up process, but we've actually automated that too, and so we can help streamline that entire process of getting customers signed up where an additional step is needed. So that's certainly part of what we offer as a service, is ensuring that process is completely streamlined.
Awesome. Let me take this one. Someone's asking, how do I add proposed rates in Energy Toolbase, and can you edit the TOU periods? So the answer is absolutely yes. We've got a pretty cool interface for you to create any type of custom rate schedule. And this question's for you, Owen. There's actually one thing even cooler. We've actually gone out and preloaded all of the proposed rates that I referred to earlier in the deck here, that the IOUs that have on the table. So we'll actually load those into your account as custom rates. Just shoot any of us over here an email. It actually takes us all of about 5 minutes to do that. So the answer is yes, you can create any sort of custom time of use-based rate based off any parameters you want. And we actually have a lot of policy organizations doing exactly that are kind of modeling the effect for different classes of customers and different load profiles. And also for California, we've actually already done the work for you. Let's see, boy, there's a lot of stuff. Do you have the ability to create new energy storage profiles easily? So boy, I could go back and talk about that for 10 minutes. There's actually two paths on the energy storage control strategy data that you can do. You can either have Energy Toolbase simulate that control strategy for you, and that's actually based on our algorithm. That peak demand shaving strategy I just showed you is based on a 30-day backwards looking simple moving average algorithm that we built. Again, as I mentioned, we're actually throwing that out, and we're now going to be attempting to solve for perfect math. And then what we're going to do is really rely on the energy storage manufacturers out there. These guys are the experts. They know way more than we ever will about what sort of actual savings could really be achieved in the field. And then really, if you think about what that means is we're going to say, okay, this is the ceiling for the highest dollar savings you could achieve based on that load profile, based on that rate schedule. And then we're going to rely on the storage manufacturers and storage developers to say, well, I think I could get 75% of that number is realistic, and that's what I'm going to go and present to my customer. So I want to make that question. One other really quick storage question for me. Can you model ancillary services, capacity markets? Currently, no. We don't do that at all. Currently, we're exclusively doing those three control strategies and just quantifying savings where you're really just extracting value from the rate tariff and how that's defined. So we definitely know in some of those East Coast markets, we're just not set up today. Let's see, Tim, can you talk about a couple questions, just broad questions about the different file formats of green button data, JSON, CSV, XML? What's the difference, and kind of what do you guys export out?
Sure, absolutely. So part of what we do is that we provide those formats directly to you. So whatever software or platform that you're using, you can integrate. The green button defaults oftentimes is XML, and so that's kind of one of the standard formats. We found that JSON at times can be a lot easier to read, and so we provide it in that way too. And then providing it in CSV format as well is if you're running kind of your own analytics, if you built your own Excel models, you can just start piping that data directly in there. So we're in that sense, we provide you a variety of formats, and that you're able to use the specific ones that you need. And in addition to providing the green button data in those formats, also providing the monthly billing data with the various demand charge breakdowns and all of that, getting that out of PDF format and getting that already imported into Excel or JSON, and being able to just take that data and fly it instead of having to manually type it in, because we know that can be quite time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to take one more question. There's so many, and a lot of these we're going to respond to on email, because I mean we just really value a lot of our power users are asking really detailed questions. But two people asked the same one. What if the green button data file is incomplete? What if you've only got a month, or what if you're missing a month or two? What if you're missing a day? And then someone else, Brian's asking, well, what if I've got a customer, I've got 12 months of data, but for 3 months maybe he's been net metering, and for 9 months he wasn't. Both great questions. And basically, for Brian's question, if you have 12 months of data, what you're going to want to do is either just take 9 or just take 3, because if you upload the data, halfway through that they actually started doing something differently, like net metering a solar system, your analysis is not going to be, very relevant. And then on Mark's question, it happens all the time. We have missing data, we have missing intervals, we have missing days. Utility API passes the exact file that they're retrieving, and we do some cleaning to that file on our side. And effectively what we do is very simple, and we have documentation of it on our site. Let's just say, for instance, there's 4 missing intervals on Tuesday at 4 to 5 p.m. for whatever reason. Maybe the smart meter went down, I don't know. What we do is we look at the most recent Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. and we populate that in. The other question, it wasn't asked, but it happens all the time. What is the minimum amount of data that Energy Toolbase requires to populate a full 365-day year? And the answer there is it's actually only 1 week. If you give us a Sunday through a Monday, a full 1 week of data, we're actually going to make that into an entire year of data. But as you can imagine, it's not very significant. Yes, you're going to have a 365-day year of data, but it's not really realistic because we're not capturing the summer usage and the winter usage. We're basing it all entirely on 1 week. So that's the best we can do because we really don't want to be making assumptions on your behalf. So I think we are already past time. It ran really smooth, Tim. I'm happy with that. I'm just so bummed. Apparently, GoToWebinar capped us at 100, and we had 350 plus registrations. So unfortunately, a lot of people probably got locked out. So we're going to have to forward them the video, or maybe we'll host this again. But let's end it there. And guys, we'll respond to every single one of you on email with these other questions, and we're always happy to get on a private call with you. So thank you very much for your time today, and the recording will be in your inbox in an hour or two. Alrighty, see you guys. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Adam.